It's good to be back with you again. Yes, thank you. Over the past several months, my wife and I have been going into the book of Judges and looking at it. And it was kind of funny, when you start looking at the book of Judges, you realize that everything that we're dealing with socially are things that, well, the Judges dealt with. So if you have your Bibles, I want you to turn to Judges chapter 4. In the book of Judges, we find that there is civil unrest. We find that there's some uncertainty of what life is going to be like. We find that there's problems with being attacked from outside, and then there's attack from inside. We have corrupt leadership. Does any of that sound familiar right now? Oh yeah, every bit of it. But when you start going in there, and I wish we had a whole lot more time. Actually, my wife and I have started this, and it takes about 20 hours to do all of it. But today we're going to kind of do a revised version of it. But in chapter 2, if you were to look at that, you would find that there's a pattern that Israel continues to doing. Number one, we find that they get away from God. They turn their backs on Him. They get involved with some idolatry, and they just walk away from His Word. At that time, then, what does God do? Well, He sends somebody to oppress them. And they find themselves under oppression for many years. Then finally, number 3, they start calling out. They realize, whoops, we made a mistake here. We repent. God, help us out, deliver us. And then the 4th stage, God always sent a redeemer, someone to deliver them. And then everything is cool for a period of years. And then what happens? They repeat the cycle over and over again. And so that's where we are. So if you turn now to Judges chapter 4. Now, I'm going to be reading it from Hebrew, so it may be a little bit different. And I'm going to be using the Hebrew terms here. And the reason being is there's a whole level of meaning with the names. And we'll look at that. So let's look. Chapter 4, verse 1. It says, the children of Israel continued to do what was evil in the eyes of Hashem once Ehud died. Again, you have the repeat of that cycle. Hashem delivered them into the hand of Yavin, king of Canaan, who was in Hatzor, who reigned in Hatzor. Now, wait a minute. Pastor, when I read that, we have a problem here. Did anybody catch that oddity here? Let's look at it. Hashem delivered them into the hand of Yavin, or you call him Jabin, the king of Canaan. Now, wait a minute. Where's the problem? The problem lies in the fact that we killed him 150 years before this. If you were to go back and look in Joshua chapter 11 and read the first 10, 11 verses, you'll see that you had Yavin, the king of Canaan, there. Now, wait a minute. If we killed him 150 years ago, why are we talking about him again here? Is this one of his descendants? Well, the key to it is understanding that term Yavin, or you call him Jabin. You see, there was more of a title than that of a name. It's kind of like Pharaoh. Because when we look in the scriptures, how many pharaohs do we find? There's a bunch of them, right? How many of them do we know the actual name for? Now you have somebody like Pharaoh Necho, but there are several pharaohs. Like, for instance, who was the pharaoh during the time of Moses? His name's not given. It's just called Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Same thing with this Yavin, and that's going to be important as we get on a little bit later on. But it said that he reigned in Hatzor. Remember, Hatzor was one of those cities that Joshua burned down to the ground. And it was never completely rebuilt. It says the general of his army was Sisera, who dwelt in Harosheth Goim. Now, if we had a map, I have to show you that Hatzor is to the northern part. In fact, it's north of the Sea of Galilee, almost due north of it. This place where we were talking about, Harosheth Goim, that's more toward the southwest. getting close to Megiddo. Pastor, you remember reading there. It's actually close to Megiddo, so it's quite a ways away. Which is odd. You would think this general would be there close to him. It says the children of Israel cried out to Hashem, for Sisera had 900 iron chariots, and he oppressed the children of Israel forcefully for 20 years. Pastor, it took us 20 years before we started to admit that we made a mistake. Yeah, a little hard-headed, yes. What, Jews hard-headed? Nah, not at all, not at all. But it says he had 900 iron chariots. Now understand that iron chariots during that time would be kind of like our tanks today. Now here brings up a question. Why didn't we capture some of those chariots, even during the time of Joshua, to level the playing field? Wouldn't that have been logical? But if you remember in the book of Joshua, God commanded Joshua not to take them. In fact, he commanded them to burn them down. Why? Because God wanted us to put our faith in him, not in anything else. But anyway, they have 900 chariots. But I want you to look at verse 4, because this one's going to be an odd one. Devorah. Now you know her as Deborah. We know her as Devorah. Devorah in Hebrew means bee, B-E-E, like a honeybee. Well, what does that tell us about her? Does that mean she stung? Did she sting people? Was she nurturing? Was she sweet? Well, we'll find out a little bit more as we go. And it says that she was a prophetess. Notice that she's recognized as a prophetess before all this stuff takes place. But now look at the next part. In fact, I want to look at this one. It says, now Devorah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidot. Well, in Hebrew, it reads, Devorah was a prophetess, a fiery woman. Now, wait a minute. Where do we get fiery woman out of the wife of Lapidot? Well, if we wanted to talk about a wife, let's say that Pastor David wanted to talk about his wife, he would say, Ishti, my wife. It would come from that word Isha. But that's not the word that we use here. The word that's used here is the word Eshet. Now, we've heard that word before. In fact, every Friday night, the Jewish man, when he's sitting at the dinner table, will start singing to his wife Proverbs 31, starting with verse 10, and it's called the virtuous woman. And it uses that term Eshet, Eshet Chayil. We don't say wife of valor. It says woman of valor. Well, that word Eshet is what's used here. But then look at that word Lapidot. What does Lapidot mean? It comes from the Hebrew word lapid, which means torch. To put it in plural feminine, it's Lapidot, which means what? Woman of torches. Now, why would we call her the woman of torches? Well, part of it is because according to Jewish tradition, she was the one that made the wicks to be used in the tabernacle. But it's also very descriptive of her and what she's going to do. So I want you to remember that term, fiery woman. Now, does that mean she was hot-headed? She was a honeybee that stung you and let you on fire, right? No. We'll get back to that later. And she judged Israel at the time. She would sit under the date palm of Deborah. So what does that mean? Does that mean that she owned an orchard of date palms? Remember, she was a prophetess and a judge. In fact, she was really the first one that held both offices, prophetess and a judge. Why did she sit under the date palm? Well, as a woman being a judge, that was highly unusual. But by doing it under the date palm, what does that tell us? It was done in the open air, so that there was no question of any hanky-panky going on. It kept everything on the up and up. And she lived between Ramah and Bethel on Mount Ephraim to the south. And the children of Israel will go up to her for judgment. She sent and summoned Barak. Now, what does Barak mean? What's that name Barak mean? Anybody? It means lightning. Oh, now that's interesting. You have a woman of torches and lightning together. Kind of a thematic connection. Now, Barak, he was a fierce warrior. And that's going to come out here in a little bit. She sent and summoned Barak, the son of Avinoam, of Kadesh Naphtali. Kadesh Naphtali is southwest part of the Sea of Galilee. Behold, Hashem, the God of Israel, has commanded, go and convince the people to go up toward Mount Tabor, and take with you 10,000 men from the children of Naphtali and from the children of Zebulun. And I will draw toward you to Kishon Baruch, Sisera, the son of Yavin's army, with his chariot and his multitude, and I shall deliver him into your hand. Notice, she tells him from the very beginning that what? I'm going to be there with you. I'm going to go with you, except what I'm not going to do is what? I'm going to draw him to you. In other words, she's setting up what? An ambush. And she's being part of the bait. But now let's look at this next part. Barak said to her, if you go with me, I will go. But if you don't go with me, I will not go. People have traditionally taken that verse to say, well, the reason that she was a prophetess and a judge is because there wasn't any real men. I would like for you to tell that to Barak. I want you to stop and think. Think about this for a minute. Do you think 10,000 men could be convinced by a pansy? Barak is summoning, he is convincing 10,000 men to go into battle with him. Guys, especially those of you who are former military, would you follow a pansy? I don't think so. He was a fierce warrior. But then we have to ask the question, why would they then make this statement? If you go with me, I'll go. But if you don't go with me, I won't go. Did that show cowardice on his part? No. Remember, Deborah was already considered a prophetess, yes? That means that she was the mouthpiece for God, for the people. If you were a military leader, and you're going up against 900 chariots, and you don't have one, don't you think you would want your spiritual advisor to be with you? Remember, she summoned Barak to come to her, and then she tells him, God has told me to tell you that one, he's going to deliver him into your hand. He'd be a fool not to take his spiritual advisor with him. So no, let's don't look at that and think he was a pansy or that there wasn't any real men. The Jewish thought is, it doesn't matter if a person was male or female. If God is operating in their life, God can use them, whether they're male or female. We want, how shall I say, uptight about that. In fact, look in modern days. We had a female prime minister, Golda Meir. She was a tough old bird. In fact, in some ways, she kind of reminds me of Devorah. Let's look at it. Verse 9, she said, indeed, I will go with you, but the path on which you have chosen to go will not be for your glory. For Hashem will have delivered Sisera into the hand of a woman. Spoiler alert. It's not going to be Deborah. It's not going to be Devorah. It says, then Devorah got up and went with Barak to Kadesh. And Barak mustered the Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh, and 10,000 men ascended in his footsteps, and Devorah went up with him. But look at verse 11. This verse seems to be out of place here. It says what? Now Chaver, the Kenite, had separated from the Kenites. Let's just take that first part. Number one, who are the Kenites? No comment. The Kenites were metal workers. They were mainly nomadic. A lot of them lived around the area of Jericho. But they were your metalsmiths. Well, I guess if you're going to go into battle, what? Metalsmiths would be important, yes? But then he separated from the rest of the Kenites. Now understand the Kenites were there before Abraham came into the land. All right? But now he is separating from the rest of the Kenites. Why? Why would he separate from them? That's going to be a very important part here a little bit later on. The descendants of Habab, the father-in-law of Moses. Now wait a minute, Pastor, I thought Jethro was his father-in-law. So what, was this another father-in-law? No, actually Habab and Jethro are the same person. All right? They're the same individual. And you say, well, wait a minute. Why are they calling him two different names? Well, let's see. Here, many of you know me as Dale. But in Israel, I'm Shmuel. My name is Shmuel ben Aharon HaKohen. Now you see why I go by Dale here. It's much easier for you. But in Israel, they don't know me as Dale. I'm Shmuel. Or, as my wife calls me, Shmuley. Now, the only difference is that my wife has this tendency to accentuate the muley part. It fits. It says, pitch this tense as far as the plain of Zahanaim, which is near Kadesh. And then look at verse 12. They told Sisera that the Barak, the son of Avinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor. Who is they? Who's the they they're talking about? Well, it would imply that it was Chaver. We need to remember that, and we'll tie all these pieces together in a moment. Verse 13, Sisera mustered all his chariots, 900 iron chariots, and all the people who were with him from Horushet-Goim to Kishon Brook. Pastor, you remember the Kishon Brook. You remember when we were there at Mount Carmel? We were on top of the roof of that building, and we looked down, and you could see where the event with the prophets of Baal and Elijah took place, and you could see that little brook. That was the Kishon Brook, except that was on the west side. This is now going to be on the eastern part of it, but it's that same brook. Devorah said to Barak, arise for this day when Hashem has delivered Sisera into your hand. Behold, Hashem has gone forth before you. So Barak descended from Mount Tabor with 10,000 men behind him. Look at verse 15. Hashem confounded Sisera and all the chariots in the entire camp by the edge of the sword before Barak. Sisera dismounted from his chariot and fled on his feet. Barak chased after the chariots and after the camp until Horushet-Goim, and the entire camp of Sisera fell by the edge of the sword. Not one of them was left. But I want you to look now at verse 17. Sisera fled on his feet to the tent of Yael, the wife of Chaver, the Kenite. For there was a peace between Yavin, king of Hatzor, and the house of Chaver, the Kenite. Oh, okay. Now, Pastor, this brings up a lot of questions. So we know that Chaver has a peace treaty with Yavin, right? That's established. And we know that, well, Chaver went to warn Sisera that Barak was on Mount Tabor. Now, the question is, was that part of the plan? Did Devorah know that Chaver would run tell Barak or tell Sisera about Barak and using him as a pawn? But then the next part is, it says that Sisera fled on foot to the tent of Yael. How did he know that Chaver and Yael lived in that area. Remember, Chaver separated from the rest of the Kenites. How did he know where she was? And notice he doesn't run to the tent of Chaver. He runs straight to the tent of Yael. Why? How does he know they're there? How does he know where her tent is? Why does he travel to her? It implies that there must be some type of a relationship here. Now, maybe he knew Chaver being a metal worker. Maybe there's a professional connection. What we do know is that, he runs to Yael. Now, is Yael Jewish? No, she's not Jewish. Remember, her husband is a Kenite. Why would she do all of this? What does her name mean, Yael? Well, you can translate it one of two ways. Mountain goat or gazelle. I like the gazelle better. That sounds better, right? But notice he's running straight to her tent. Now let's go on. By the way, when it says that Hashem confounded Sisera in verse 15, he doesn't really tell us here, but in chapter 5 it talks about this big rainstorm. Look at verse 18. Yael went out toward Sisera and said to him, "Turn aside, my lord, turn aside to me, don't fear." So he turned aside to her to the tent, and she covered him with a blanket. Oh, that's sweet. He said to her, "Give me now a bit of water, because I'm thirsty." Well, I guess so. He just fought in this major battle. All of his army got slaughtered. He runs to her tent. So I bet he is thirsty. But notice, what does he ask for? He says, "Give me a little bit of water because I'm thirsty." Yes? But what does she do? She doesn't give him water. She opened a skin of milk, gave him a drink, and covered him. Why would she give him milk? He asked for water. It would have been a whole lot simpler to give him water. What was the purpose of giving him milk and then covering up with a blanket? Unless she's wanting what? To lull him to sleep. You know he's tired. He's had this battle that didn't go too well. He jumps off his chariot. Well, why did he jump off his chariot? Well, the Cohen got flooded because of the rainstorm. The iron chariots get stuck. They're of no use anymore. So what does he have to do? He has to jump down, and he runs on feet to her tent. And by the time he got there, I'm sure he's tired, thirsty. She gives him some warm milk. She covers him up, lulling him to sleep. He said to her, "Stand at the entrance of the tent, and it shall be that if any man will come and ask you, and say, 'Is anyone here?' you shall say, 'No.'" Look at verse 21 now. Yael, the wife of Chaver, took a tent peg, placed a hammer in her hand, came to him stealthily, and drove the peg into his temple, and it went through his head to the ground. Now, wait a minute. She just broke that peace agreement. She shattered that peace agreement, didn't she? Remember, her husband's family has a peace treaty with Yavin, and Sisera is his general. She has just smashed, literally, that peace agreement. Would that put her at odds with her husband? Because remember, her husband's the one that went and told the general about Barak. What gave her the right to do that? Why would she do it? The question is, did the Kenites have another agreement? Did they also have an agreement with Israel? Actually, we know they do. If you were to go look in the book of Samuel, you'll find that, remember, King Saul, the first king, was going to go to war against the Amalekites. He approached the Kenites and he told the Kenites, you need to leave here. I'm about to attack the Amalekites. I'm going to wipe them out. I don't want to hurt you. You were good to us when we left Egypt. So what did the Kenites do? They left. So yes, there was an agreement. But stop and think about this. And I'll try to be a little delicate here in this part. That time in history was very brutal. And it could be very brutal for women. Remember, at that time, women were considered property. Didn't have a whole lot of rights. It wasn't unusual for an invading army to come in and just, well, have their way with the women. Could it be that maybe one of the reasons she decided to drive that tent peg through his head is she knows that, when he wakes up, he may want more than just some water. That is a possibility. But is it also possible that her loyalty to Israel was greater than anything else? And she took that opportunity now to deliver not only herself and her family, but Israel. Verse 22, let's look at it. He was sleeping deeply and exhausted, and he died. Well, I guess so, after a tent stake through your head. Verse 22, behold, Barak had been pursuing Sisera, and Yael went toward him and told him, come, and I will show you the man who you seek. He came to her, and behold, Sisera was fallen, dead with a peg in his temple. And it says, on that day God subjugated Yavin, king of Canaan, before the children of Israel. The hand of the children of Israel became progressively harsh over Yavin, king of Canaan, until they destroyed Yavin, king of Canaan. Notice, they didn't kill him immediately. It says that God subjugated him. And then it said that Israel what? Dealt harsh over him, and they destroyed him. What does that mean, they destroyed him? Does that mean that they just killed him? Or remember, if this is his name, or that name Yavin is the title of a king, and it says they subjugated him and they dealt harshly toward him until he was destroyed. Could that also make reference to the fact that that Canaanite tribe has been now eliminated? Because we never hear of a Yavin, king of Canaan, ever again. Remember that there were 7 tribes of Canaanites there in Israel at the time. Now, when we look at this, there's a lot of things that we can gather from all of it. But real quick, I want you to look in chapter 5. Now, Pastor, I'm going to let you use my Bible here, and I want you to look at the pattern that you see. Huh? Well, you're going to look at the Hebrew side.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to read Hebrew.
I want you to look. I want you to look at it and let me describe it to the people, and you can confirm it. What you see is you'll see a line of Hebrew words, and then a big space, and then another line of Hebrew words, and it's kind of staggered. Because above those spaces, there's more Hebrew above it and Hebrew under it, right? So it's staggered. Staggered like what? Kind of like bricks. But you can confirm that, yes?
Yes.
That's a form of Hebrew writing. And the only time that we find this is in the book of Exodus at the Song of the Sea. Moses. Why all these empty spaces? What's the purpose of it? What does it teach us? It shows us that in these times of uncertainty, in these times of distress, when we may look around and we may not be able to see God, we know He's there because we're surrounded by His Word. He's there even though we may not see Him. And when I look at the story of the judges, yes, we messed up, right? And it's funny, I read, there's a debate in the Gemara where it actually says, did Israel get the judges they deserve, or did the judges get the people they deserved? And I thought about that for a minute, and I thought about us here in America today. Are we getting the leaders today that we deserve? Or are they getting the people that they deserve? Neither one of those sound good. But when I look at that, Pastor, I can find some reassurance. Yes, we messed up. We got away from God's Word. Yes, there was an oppression that set out. But then what? We came to the point where we as a nation realized, whoops, we've done wrong. And we cried out to God. And the great thing is, what? That He was listening. That He heard our cries. He heard our repentance. And then He sent someone to deliver us. And so when I look at this, it's like, okay, yes, there were some bad times. But what turned those bad times around? It wasn't a new election. It wasn't getting a new king or getting a new judge. What did it? Huh? It was repentance. It was the fact that we recognized that we hadn't really followed God the way we should have been. And we cried out to Him, and He listened. I love that part. I love that. Now, real quick, I just want to hit upon a couple of things here. In chapter 5, Deborah comes out and says, I am the mother of Israel. Now, that was a pretty bold statement, right? Verse 7, it says they stopped living in unwalled towns in Israel. They stopped until I, Deborah, arose. I arose as a mother in Israel. What does that mean? She arose like a mother in Israel. Remember, she was the bee, right? And she was a fiery woman. When you think of a judge, what do you think of? Most people think of this person sitting behind a desk with an anvil making legal decisions, judgments, right? It's not what we're talking about here. Did some of the judges listen to legal cases? Yes. But the biblical judge was what? Number one, they were Torah scholars. In other words, they knew God's Word. One of the things that they were supposed to do is try to bring the people back to God and to His Word. They were also military strategists. Well, look at Deborah. Was she a military strategist? Yes, she was. Now, in chapter 5, we find out that there was more than just Zebulun and Naphtali there. We found that there was others. Some of them followed her. Some of them fought with both her and Barak. And then she chastised those tribes that didn't get involved. She actually calls Reuben a coward. So she was a strategist. But she also did what? Tried to light a fire under the people. When we talk about her being a fiery woman, she lit a fire under him. She lit a fire under Barak. He went and convinced 10,000 men to go to battle, telling them that God was with them, that they would be victorious. Oh, yeah. They defeated an army that had 900 tanks, and they didn't have one. Pretty impressive. Was God with them? Absolutely. they drew back. And Pastor, one of the things we find odd about Deborah is if you go back and you look at the judges, you'll find that it will say, and so judged Israel for such and such years. And there were so many years of tranquility, and then that judge died. Pastor never talked about Deborah dying. Now, obviously, we know that she did. But it appears that after this event, she went back to her place between Ramah and Bethel and continued to judge Israel. She lit a fire under the people. When she says, I was a mother to Israel, she nourished them. She encouraged them to be what they could be. We need some of those kind of judges today, don't we? But what I want you to take away with is that no matter how dark it got, the people would cry out, God would hear them and send a Redeemer. The thing that he wanted from us is just repentance and following his word. And isn't that what he's always wanted all the time? Just to follow his word, to do what he said. All right, Pastor, it's 10 o'clock now. So do we have time for any questions, or you want me to give it right back to you?
10 minutes worth of questions.
Okay, real quick. Questions, comments, rebuttals. Okay.
What time of history was this? How many years before BC and after that?
Well, the period of the judges takes place over almost 400 years. So, this was you can say the judges started roughly 360, almost 400 years before King Saul. So that kind of puts you where we are in history. Also, when you read the book of Ruth, remember that the book of Ruth took place during that time of the judges. Now, there's a question. Some people think it was during the time of Gideon. Some people think it was with Othniel. But remember with Gideon, remember the people were having to hide? In fact, he was having to thresh the wheat underground. The time of Ruth, they were what? Outside. So it would either have to be after Gideon or before. So I don't know how much that answers your question, but that kind of gives you a little bit of a time period. One of the things that I want to encourage you to do, a lot of people have been taught what to think. Pastor made the comment that I always have questions and will challenge you with questions. There's a reason for that. I don't want to tell you what to think. I want to provoke you how to think. And there's a difference between knowing what to think and how to think. This is why I have all the questions. I want you to learn how to think. Any other questions, comments, rebuttals? Very quick. No? Well, while you're thinking about that, let me tell you, my wife and I have been working on this project. And one of the things that we've been working on is some workbooks, some study guides. We also have been wanting to launch a website to have some podcasts, videos, as well as these study guides. We've got a lot of the equipment to do it, and well, the reason we haven't launched it yet is, to be honest with you, my internet sucks. I tried to upload some video. My upload is less than 1. Now, I've been trying to find somewhere where I could go that had good high speed, and finally this week I found a place. It's a little bit of a drive for me. But Pastor, I have less than 1. He has 50. So hopefully soon we'll be able to get that out. And we've got the website kind of up. If you were to go to it, it would say still under construction. But I'll give you what it is. You ready? It's called the Shmuley Files. Shmuley, S-H-M-U-L-E-Y. The Shmuley Files. And the reason we're calling it the Shmuley Files is, well, I don't want to be locked in. We're going to be talking about a plethora of different things. Because there's a lot of things we would love to share with you that, well, sometimes we just don't have time in churches to do that. And we will cover certain areas that, well, again, we just don't have time to do it. Like, for instance, when we're studying this, I did this with a group up in Oregon, and when we started talking about the Amalekites, I asked them, who are the Amalekites? Guess what their response was? People in the Bible that lived there. I said, okay, all right, great. So tell me, who was Amalek? I don't know. Okay. So I'd have to tell them. And I thought, okay, Pastor, this is Old Testament, so most people are not that familiar with Old Testament. So I thought, okay, all right, I'm going to take a group of people that everybody's very familiar with. And let's see how many of you know the answer. The Galatians. Who were they? And I know somebody will say, they're people from Galatia. But who were they? Who were the Galatians? What if we knew where they come from? Would that help us to better understand the book? They were Celts. They were the Celtic people. There were 3 tribes of the Celts that came down to actually fight with a king. And they came in, and they're the ones that were responsible for Galatia. Does that now help you understand? If you know who the Celts were, you understand they were polytheistic. They had a hard time with this idea of just one God. Now, they could add another one. That's cool. But only one? So, yes. These are the things we'll be doing on the Shmuley Files. It's going in there. We'll talk about tours to Israel. We'll talk about archaeology. We may talk about Holocaust studies. And we may even get into some aspects of church history. But we want to make it to where we talk about a lot of different things. And that's why we call it the Shmuley Files. Okay, Pastor, it's about that time. Let me give it back to you. Thank you for allowing me to come and share with you this morning. I hope that I provoke you to think. But thank you for allowing me to come. Thank you so much for the support that you've given me during this difficult time. That means a great deal to us. And I know, Pastor, thank you for all your words about my son. For those of you who do not know, I lost my youngest son back in the end of October. So thank you for your compassion and all that. Thank you.